Ohai. Bethlehem, the city on the West Bank which is under military and civil control of the Palestinian National Authority. Zone A. The capital of the Palestinian province Bethlehem, in the historic area of Judea. Center of a pilgrimage and tourism. It is located in 10 km to the south from Jerusalem, on which actually borders. The area -5.4 km. The population -24949 people. 2007. It is considered that for the first time the city is mentioned in a Marnsky archive. 1330 BB. When Hanani owned him. In Bethlehem, according to the antiquated First Book of Kingdoms, I was born and the Tsar David, therefore the city is also called as the city of Davidev was spread on the kingdom. According to the Gospel, Bethlehem is the birthplace of Jesus Christ, therefore it is esteemed by Christians as the second in sanctity after Jerusalem. In the 2nd century the city was destroyed by the Emperor Adrian during the revolt Bar Kokhba. His revival was promoted by the Empress Helena, Constantine the Great's mother, who enjoined to construct big church of the Nativity in 327. In 529 the temple was strongly damaged by the Samaritans who robbed it during the revolt, but was built up by the Emperor Justinian I later. In 637 Bethlehem was conquered by Muslims whose government proceeded in the city before gained by his crusaders in 1099, who replaced local Orthodox clergy with Latin. In the middle of the 13th century Mamelukes destroyed city walls which at the beginning of the 16th century were built up by Ottomans. After World War I the power in Bethlehem passed from Ottomans to the British. In 1948, during the Arab-Israeli War, the city was occupied with Transjordan, and later, during Six-Day War. 1967. Israel. Since 1995, according to agreements to Oslo, Bethlehem completely is operated by the Palestinian National Authority. Today's Bethlehem, the city mainly Muslim, but still remaining the house for a considerable part of the Palestinian Christian community. The city economy develops mainly due to the tourism reaching the peak during a Christmas season when Christians, as well as in the last 2000 years, make a pilgrimage to the sacred den. In Bethlehem more than 30 hotels and 300 craft workshops are located. At northern entry into the city Achilles' tomb, an important shrine of Judaism, Christianity and Islam, is located. Bethlehem is located in Judaic mountains at the height about 775 meters above sea level, in 2 km to the south from Jerusalem. In nearby cities, Beit Safafa and Jerusalem in the north, Beit Dala in the northwest, Husan in the west, Al-Qadr and Artis in the southwest, and Beit Zakar in the east. Beit Dala and the last form agglomeration with Bethlehem. Refugee camps Aida and El Azza are located in city boundaries. In the center of Bethlehem there is his old city consisting of 7 mosaically located quarters forming space around Yasli Square, Christian and Nadzashra. Al-Farakiya, Al-Anatra, Anatarashma Al-Kavafsa, Al-Harazit, Al-Harazit and Al-Favagra, the only Muslim quarter. The majority of Christian quarters are designated in honor of the Arab swords Ghassanadav which lodged there. The quarter of Al-Kavafsa was formed in the 8th century by the Arab Christian emigrants of the nearby city of Taqwavan. There is also Syrian quarter outside the old city, which residents come from the Turkish cities of Midyat and Amali. Total number of the population of the old city is 5,000 people. Climate in Bethlehem Mediterranean, with hot dry summer and soft, more damp winters. Winters from the middle of December on the middle of March are cool and rainy. The coldest temperatures in January -1. 13 C. Sometimes there are frosts. Temperature drop is noted too. 7 C. In the winter occasionally snow, usually on one day a month in December, January and February drops up. From May to October weather warm and solar. The most high temperatures in August at most 30 C. In Bethlehem 700 millimeters of rainfall, on average drop out of them 70% from November to January. Average annual relative humidity in Bethlehem makes 60% and the highest rates reaches from January to February. In May humidity level the lowest. Night dew appears within 180 days in a year. The city is under the influence of the Mediterranean breeze happening somewhere in the middle of the day. Bethlehem is also influenced by annual waves of hot, dry, sandy and dusty winds hamsing out from Arabian Desert in April, May and the middle of June. In the neighborhood of Bethlehem tanks and fragments of ceramics carried to era of a Bronze Age were open. The earliest mention of Bethlehem presumably contains in the Marnsky archive. 1350-1330 BB. In one of 6 letters to the Egyptian pharaoh, the governor of Jerusalem Abdi-Heba asks for help of the pharaoh in return of Bidlachmi to him after the people revolt to Heba. Now even the city near Jerusalem, Neretzaimi Bidlachmi, the settlement which is once belonging to the Tsar passed to Kiel's inhabitants. Yes, the Tsar of a word of the servant your Abdi-Hebi will hear, and will send archers and will return imperial lands to the Tsar. It is considered that the similarity of the name Bidlachmi to his modern form indicates that it was the settlement, divided Semitic cultural and language heritage with later newcomers. Tulachm was Akkad god of fertility to whom Hanani worshipped as Laham. Sometime in the 3rd millennium BB, Hanani built on the hill nowadays known as the Hill of Christmas, the temple probably devoted to Laham. The temple, and then the city formed around it, was known as Bethlehem, the house. Temple of Laham. Later Philistines created garrison there. Excavation by John the Gallian Palestinian expedition in 2016 of the cemetery found in the spring of 2013 showed that the necropolis covered 3 hectares and originally contained more than 100 burials used about 2200-650 BB. Archaeologists could distinguish at least 30 burials. Archaeological confirmation on Bethlehem as the city in Judah was revealed in 2012 at excavation in the city of Davida in the form of the bull. The clay press, with Hebrew letters saying, "From the city of Bethlehem Arain," specifying that it was used for sealing up of the ropes connecting freights of grain, the wine and other goods sent as a tax payment in the 8th or 7th century BB. Biblical scholars consider that Bethlehem located on Judaic hills and is Bible Ephrathah. What means fruitful, as in the book by the prophet Mickey there is a link to him as Bethlehem Ephrathah. For difference from Bethlehem Zavulanav. The Bible also calls it Bethlehem Judaic, and the New Testament describes him as the city of Davidav. He is for the first time mentioned in the Bible as the place where died and the foremother Rachel was buried, on the road. Rachel's tomb, the traditional place of burial, is located at entry into Bethlehem. According to the book by Raf, the valley in the east from the city are a place where Rafmovityenka cleaned fields and I returned to the city with no menu. In the message of the 4th century, the pilgrim from Bredigola reported that David, Ezekiel, Asaph, Job, Isaiah and Solomon's tombs are near Bethlehem. That wasn't confirmed. During government of the Tsar of Judea Herod, according to the Gospel, in Bethlehem Jesus Christ was born. In 132 Bethlehem was destroyed by troops of the Emperor Adrian at suppression of a revolt Bar Kokhba. Subsequently Adrian constructed over Christmas then a sanctuary in honor of the Greek god Adonis to honor the favorite, the Greek young man Antinoa. Some scientists believe that this place was initially devoted to Adonis Tammuz, and then it is accepted Christians as the birthplace of Jesus Christ. About 326 the Empress Helena, the spouse of the Emperor Constantius Laura and mother of the Emperor Constantine the Great, made a pilgrimage to the Holy Land during which she visited Bethlehem. The Empress promoted restoration of the city and, according to Evsevia Kesariski, directed construction of Church of the Nativity. In 529, during the revolt of Samaritans, Bethlehem was plundered, and his walls and Church of the Nativity are destroyed. They were restored on command of the Emperor Justinian I. In 614 the Persian Empire Sassanidov, supported by the Jewish insurgents, intruded in Palestine Prima and occupied Bethlehem. The latest sources claim the Persians refrained from destruction of a basilica, having seen on a mosaic of magicians in the Persian clothes. In 637, soon after capture of Jerusalem, Muslim troops were included into Bethlehem. The second Caliph of Islam Umar ibn Khattab left a basilica in possession of Christians. In the city, on the place near church where Umar prayed, the mosque devoted to his name was built. Then in the 8th century, Bethlehem passed under the power of the Islamic Caliphate of Umayyadov, then in the 9th century Abbasidov. In the middle of the 9th century the Persian geographer wrote that in the city there is well remained and very esteemed temple. In 985 the Arab geographer Shamsuddin al-Muqaddasi visited Bethlehem and mentioned the temple as to Constantine's Basil, equal which isn't anywhere in the country. In 1009, in government of the 6th Fatimidsky Caliph, Al-Hakim Bayamrilik, Church of the Nativity it was ordered to demolish, but it was saved by local Muslims. It was authorized to them to make worship in the southern cross aisle of the building. In 1099 Bethlehem was captured by the Crusaders, who strengthened it and built the new monastery and at a northern facade of Church of the Nativity. The Orthodox clergy is removed because of his views and replaced by Latin clergymen. Hitherto official Christian presence in the region was an Orthodox Christian. On Christmas of 1100 Balduin I, first king of the Franksky Jerusalem kingdom, was crowned in Bethlehem. Same year in the city the Latin episcopate was also created. In 1187 Saladin, the Sultan of Egypt and Syria who headed Muslim Ayyubidav won Bethlehem from Crusaders. Latin priests were forced to leave that allowed Orthodox clergy to return. In 1192 Saladin agreed to return of 2 Latin priests and 2 deacons. But Bethlehem suffered from loss of income from a pilgrimage as there was a sharp decrease in number of the European pilgrims. Guillaume IV, the Count Navarski, promised Christian bishops of Bethlehem that if the city falls into hands of Muslims, he will meet them in the small town Clomcy that in present Burgundy. Finally the Bishop Bethlehem in Douar, in 1223, lodged in Hospital de Pantenner. Flames remained a constant bishop's throne of the Bethlehem in partibus infidelium of nearly 600 years, up to the French Revolution of 1789. In 1229, under the contract between the Emperor of the Sacred Roman Empire Frederick II and the Ayyubidski Sultan Al-Kamil Muhammad ibn Ahmad, Bethlehem, together with Jerusalem, Nazareth and Sidon, was transferred to the Jerusalem Kingdom in exchange for 10 years' truce between Ayyubidami Crusaders. The contract expired in 1239, and in 1244 Bethlehem was captured by Muslims. In 1250, with coming to power of Mamelukes led by Rukn ad-Din Bejbarsam, the tolerance to Christianity decreased. Pickets of clergy left the city, and in 1263 city walls were destroyed. The Latin clergy returned to Bethlehem next century, having located in the monastery adjoining Church of the Nativity. Orthodox Christians seized a basilica and divided possession of the Lacteal Den from Latiniana and Armenians. At the beginning of the 16th century, in the years of Ottoman dominion, a wall of Bethlehem were built up. Since 1517, guardianship over a basilica became a subject of fierce disputes between Catholic and Orthodox churches. By the end of the 16th century, Bethlehem became one of the largest settlements in the Jerusalem district and was divided into 7 quarters. At this time, representatives of the Basbas family served as heads of Bethlehem among other heads. The Ottoman tax report and its census of 1596 demonstrate that the population of Bethlehem then made 1435 people, that did it at the time by the 13th largest settlement in Palestine. His total income was 30,000 acres. Bethlehem paid taxes on wheat, barley and grapes. Muslims and Christians were organized in separate communities, each of which had own head. 5 chapters represented the village in the middle of the 16th century, from them 3 were Muslims. Ottoman tax reports demonstrate that the Christian population was a little more prospering or grew up more grain than grapes. Grain was goods more valuable. In 1831-1841 Palestine was under the power of the Egyptian dynasty of Muhammad Ali. At this time the city suffered from an earthquake and also destruction in 1834 by the Egyptian troops of Muslim Quarter, apparently, as punishment for murder of the exclusive loyalist Ibrahim Pasha. In 1841 Bethlehem appeared under the power of the Ottoman Empire again and remained in its structure until the end of World War I. Under the power of Ottomans, the Vifilena faced unemployment, compulsory military service and heavy taxes that led to Massachusetts emigration, especially to South America. The American missionary in the 1850th years reported that the population of the city then was up to 4,000 people, almost all from which professed orthodoxy. He also noted that the shortage of water slowed down growth of the city. The Swedish Orientalist Albert Sosin reports that, according to the official list of Ottoman settlements, approximately since 1870 in Bethlehem there were 179 Muslims in 59 houses, 979 in 256 houses, 824 Greeks, in 213 houses and 41 Armenians in 11 houses, in total 539 houses. The population in the report included only men. The German Orientalist Martin Hartmann reported that in Bethlehem there were 520 houses. In 1918, during World War I, Bethlehem was occupied by the British troops. In 1920-1948 the city coped the British Mandate. In the resolution of the United Nations General Assembly of 1947 on the partition of Palestine, Bethlehem was included in the special international enclave of Jerusalem, which was forced to be operated by the United Nations. The city was occupied with Transjordan during the Arab-Israeli War of 1948. Many refugees from the areas occupied by the Israeli troops in 1947-1948 ran to the district of Bethlehem, having generally lodged in the places which officially began to be called as the refugee camps Al-Azza, Beit Jabrin, Aida in the north and Ad-Dakisha in the south. Inflow of refugees considerably transformed the Christian majority of Bethlehem to Muslim. Transjordan retained control over the city before Six-Day War of 1967, when Bethlehem, together with other a part of the West Bank, Israel seized. In 1995 Israel transferred him to the Palestinian National Authority according to peace agreements to Oslo. The Israeli troops were disengaged from Bethlehem, and in 3 days the city passed under complete administrative and military control of Na. During the Second Palestinian Intifada of 2005, damage was caused to infrastructure and the tourist industry of Bethlehem. In 2002 it was the first fighting zone of the Operation Protective Wall, large military counterattack of Israel Defense Forces. During counterattack of force of I besieged Church of the Nativity were about 200 Arabs, including the Palestinian fighters who took hostage about 60 priests of the basilica, looked for shelters. The siege lasted 39 days. Several fighters were killed. Finally, the agreement on exile of 13 wanted fighters to different foreign countries and 26 to the Gaza Strip was concluded. Today the city is surrounded with 2 bypass roads for settlers, owing to what locals are constrained by 37 Jewish enclaves, where a quarter of all settlers of the West Bank, about 170,000 people, and the interval between 2 roads blocked with an 8-meter wall of the Israeli dividing barrier cutting Bethlehem from Jerusalem lives. The first municipal elections in the city were held in 1876 after Muqtara, head of quarters of the old city of Bethlehem, except the Syrian quarter, made the decision to elect local council from 7 dicks for representation of each of childbirth of the city. The charter of the city was written so that if the winner of mayor elections was a Catholic, his deputy belonged to the Orthodox community. Soon, when Bethlehem the British and Hashemite began to operate, the Syrian quarter and also Tamra's Bedouins and the Palestinian refugees, 11 municipal members of council were approved, was allowed to participation in elections. In 1976 the amendment allowing women to choose and be elected to council was adopted, then the age of finding of the right to vote was increased from 21 to 25. Today Bethlehem is administrative the centers of the province of the same name. Local self-government institutions. The Bethlehem Municipal Council consists of 15 elective, including the mayor and the vice-mayor. The special charter demands that the mayor and the majority in municipal council professed Christianity, and other places were open for candidates irrespective of their religion. In council there are several political fractions, including communists, Islamists and secularists. The left groups of the Palestine Liberation Organization, PLO, such as Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine, PFLP, and Palestinian People's Party, PPP, usually take the majority of the reserved places. On the Palestinian municipal elections of 2005 of Hamas received the majority of open places. The mayor and the vice mayor of Bethlehem are obliged to profess, according to the municipal rite, Christianity. Municipal elections in October 2012 were won by the member of Fatah Vera Babin, having become the first female mayor in Palestine. At the beginning of the 16th century, according to Ottoman tax reports, Christians made about 60% of the population of Bethlehem, and the number of Muslims and Christians in the city evened out to the middle of the 16th century. However, to the end of the century, among the registered 287 adult taxpayers, Muslims weren't registered. Christians, as well as all Zim across all Ottoman Empire, were obliged to pay tax. In 1867 the American Visitor reports that from 3,000 to 4,000 people, from whom about 100 were Protestants, 300 Muslims live in the city, and the others belong to Latin and Greek churches, including several Armenians. Another report of the same year, the Christian population makes 3,000 people, and the others 50 Muslims. The source of 1885 estimated the population of the city at about 6,000, mainly Christians, and Greeks, and Jews in the city weren't. In 1948 the religious structure of the city made 85% of Christians, generally Orthodox, both Roman-Catholic, and 13% of Muslims. In the census of 1967 conducted by the Israeli authorities in Bethlehem, there were 14349 inhabitants, of whom 7790 Muslims made 53.9% of the population, while Christians of different faiths 6231 or 46.1% were registered. On a census of the Palestinian Central Statistical Bureau, PCS, of 1997, people, including in total, refugees lived in the city that made 30.3% of the population of the city. In 1997 age distribution made 27.4%, 10 years, 20% minus 30, 44 years, 12.1% minus 45, 64 years, and 5.3% in 65 years or younger. Men was registered, women minus 10594. According to a census of PISTS of 2007 in Bethlehem, there were people from whom, men, and 12513, women. Units of housing from which 5211 were households were registered. The average number of family was 4.86. After Muslim conquest of Levant in the 630th years, local Christians Obarabitsia, though the majority were ethnic Arabs from Ghassanidski childbirth. Two largest Arab Christian races of Bethlehem trace the family tree to Ghassanidam, including Al-Farqiya's childbirth and An-Nayyar. The first occurred from Ghassanadav, moved from Yemen and vicinities Wadi Musa to present Jordan, and Anad's Asher came from Nadsran. Other Bethlehem sort, Al-Nafra, also traces the family tree to Ghassanidam. Over the years, the share of Christians in the city steadily decreased, generally because of emigration. Lower birth rate of Christians also explains some part of recession. In 1947, Christians made 85% of the population, but by 1998 this indicator was reduced to 40%. In 2005, the mayor of Bethlehem, Victor Batarsa, explained that, because of tension, a physical, a psychological, and disastrous economic situation, many people emigrate, whether it be Christians or Muslims, but it is more obvious among Christians as they are already minority. The Palestinian administration is officially committed to equality for Christians, though there were violence cases against them from Service of Preventive Safety and armed groups. At Yasli Square, the Mosque of the Lobster, only in the Old City, is located. The beginnings of the Second Intifada and the tourism recession connected with it also affected Christian minority, as they are owners of many hotels and services for foreign tourists. The statistical analysis of an outcome of Christians showed lack of economic and educational opportunities, in particular because of position of Christians from the middle class and the higher education. Since the Second Intifada, of 10% of the Christian population left the city. In 2006, the Palestinian Center of Researches and Cultural Dialogue conducted survey among Christians of the city, according to which 90% told that they had Muslim friends, 73.3% agreed that no was respectful to Christian heritage of the city, and 78% called the Israeli blockade the reason of an outcome of Christians. However, it is quite probable that there is a set of factors, the majority of which are divided by the Palestinian population in general. Economy. Retail trade is the main source of income of the city, in particular during a Christmas season. The main city streets and the old markets are built-up shops where the Palestinian craft products, Middle Eastern spices, Yuva lyrica and Oriental sweets, like baklava, are on sale. A carving on an olive tree, a subject the most bought tourists visiting Bethlehem. Religious crafts include handmade jewelry from nacre and also figurines from olive wood, a casket and crosses. Other industries include a carving on a stone and marble, textiles, furniture and house accessories. The Bethlehem plants also produce paints, plastic, synthetic rubbers, medicines, construction materials and foodstuff, generally macaroni and confectionery. Since 1885, monks of the monastery Kremison produce wine. Grapes are grown up generally around Al-Qadr and in 2007 the winemaking products of the monastery made about 700,000 liters a year. Business. The first Chamber of Commerce and Industry was created in Bethlehem in the early 50s. Our first board of directors was on April 16, 1952. On August 30, 1965, the new board of directors was elected. From the beginning of celebration of the 200th anniversary of Christmas, the province Bethlehem entered a new stage of construction and development. The decree of the Minister of Economy and Trade approved the new board of directors of Chamber, into which the best businessmen and economists entered. The Chamber of Commerce and Industry of the province Bethlehem is under the auspices of the Palestinian Federation of Chambers of Commerce and Industry, the Industry and Agriculture, which is located in Jerusalem and including 15 chambers of Palestine. In 2008 in Bethlehem, the Economic Forum, largest today in the Palestinian territories, took place. It was initiated by the Prime Minister of Palestine and ex-Minister of Finance Salam Fayyad to convince more than 1,000 businessmen, bankers and government officials from all Middle East to make investments in the West Bank and the Gaza Strip. For investments into business in the Palestinian territories, $1.4 billion of Shah were collected. Tourism is the primary economic branch of Bethlehem. Unlike other Palestinian settlements till 2000, most of busy locals had no jobs in Israel. More than 20% of the working population are engaged in the industry. About 65% of city economy and 11% the Palestinian National Authority are the share of tourism. Annually to the city there come more than 2 million visitors. Church of the Nativity, one of the main attractions of Bethlehem, attracting Christian pilgrims. She is in the downtown, at Yasli Square, above a grotto or a cave called by Christmas Den where, according to the legend, Jesus Christ was born. Nearby the Dairy Cave, a lacteal den, where, according to the legend, the Holy Family took cover during escape to Egypt is found, and the Virgin dropped drops of the milk, and in the neighborhood, a cave in which Saint Jerome within 30 years wrote the Vulgate, the Latin translation of the Bible dominating to the Reformation. In Bethlehem more than 30 hotels are opened. The Asapolis, constructed in 1910 near a basilica, the oldest and one of the most successful Bethlehem hotels. In 2000 it was closed because of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict and opened again in 2005 as the Yasser Intercontinental Palace. In Bethlehem there are 3 bus stations belonging to the private companies serving Jerusalem, Beit Alu, Beit Sacher, Hebron, Nakalin, Beter, Al-Qadr to El Ubidai and Beit Fatshar. There are 2 stations of the taxi making trips to Beit Sacher, Beit Alu, Jerusalem, Taqwa and to Herodian. There are 2 departments of car rental, Mured and Orabi. Buses and the taxi with licenses of the West Bank are forbidden to drive to Israel, including Jerusalem, without the permission. Construction of the Israeli dividing barrier affected Bethlehem politically, socially and economically. The barrier is located along a northern part of the built-up territory of the city, within several houses in the refugee camp Aida on the one hand and municipality of Jerusalem with another. On the majority of entrances and departures from the Bethlehem agglomeration on the rest of the West Bank there are Israeli checkpoints and posts now. Level of access depends on the Israeli directives of safety. Movement of the Palestinian residents of Bethlehem from the West Bank to Jerusalem is regulated by the system of admissions. Palestinians have to have an admission on an entrance to the Jewish shrine Achilles' tomb. Citizens of Israel are forbidden to drive to Bethlehem and the closest Bible ponds of Solomon. Education. According to the Palestinian Central Statistical Bureau, in 1997 about 84% of the population of Bethlehem were aged more senior than 10 years competent. From the population of the city of 10414 people were enlisted in schools, 4015 in initial, 3578 in averages and 2821 in the highest. About 14.1% of pupils gained diplomas. In 2006 in the province Bethlehem there were 135 schools from which 100 were operated by the Ministry of Education of NE. 7, the Middle Eastern Agency Union for the Help to the Palestinian Refugees in the Organization of Works. BAPR. And 28 were private.
The Bethlehem University and the Catholic Mixed Educational Institution founded in 1973 in the Lasalliansky tradition open for students of all faiths.
The Bethlehem University, the first founded on the West Bank, traces the roots till 1893 when Brothers of Christian Schools opened schools on all earth of Palestine and Egypt.
From 1988 to 2008, the president of the Bethlehem Catholic University, Mitchell Assad Sabak, fulfilled duties of the Latin Jerusalem Patriarch, having become the first Arab, the head of Catholics of a Latin ceremony on the Holy Land. In Bethlehem, one state hospital subordinated to the Ministry of Health of Na Lunatic Asylum of Dr. Kamal, and also 3 private hospitals: Hospital of Holy Family, Children's Hospital of Caritas, and Al-Dibs Maternity Hospital is located.
There are also several charitable and medical institutions and the private medical clinics specializing in the field of healthcare and social development. Also, there is a set of laboratories, radiological centers, clinics of public health care and drugstores. Religion. According to a prophecy of Mickey living in the 8th century BB in the city, I had to be born the Messiah. And you, Bethlehem Ephrathah, whether you are small between you and Emis thousands, from you there will be to me that who has to be a Lord in Israel, and whom the origin from the beginning of days eternal. Therefore was considered that the Messiah has to come from the family of David, who was born in Bethlehem. Christians carry this prophecy to Jesus Christ.
Gospel describes Bethlehem as the birthplace of Jesus Christ, why the city is esteemed by Christians as the second in sanctity after Jerusalem. Various events accompanying Jesus Christ's birth are given in the Gospels of Matthew and from Luke.
In the Gospel of Luke, Jesus' parents live in Nazareth and go to Quirinius and census to Bethlehem, where Maria gave birth to Jesus. Then they came back home. Only Bethlehem, but not a census, is mentioned in the Gospel of Matthew. Having learned that in the city, Zadi Judaic, was born, Herod ordered to beat all babies at the age of 2 years and below in the city and its vicinities. Yosef, warned by the Lord's angel, fled with the family to Egypt. Later the Holy Family lodged in Nazareth. In the Gospels of Mark and Ioan there are no narrations about Christmas.
Some modern scientists doubt that Jesus was born in Bethlehem, considering Bible legends not as historical stories, and as the symbolical narratives invented to present Christmas as execution of a prophecy and to podresume communication with a genealogy of the Tsar David. An article of 2005 in the Archaeology magazine, the archaeologist Aviram Oshri points to lack of proofs that Jesus was born in Bethlehem, considering that he was born in Bethlehem Galilean. An article of 2011 in the Biblical Archaeology Review magazine, Jerome Murphy O'Connor challenges traditional opinion that Jesus was born in Bethlehem under Jerusalem.
Traditional idea of Jesus' birth in Bethlehem was supported by the Christian apologist Justin Martyr, specifying in A Conversation with Tryphon Audi 155-161 that the Holy Family took refuge in a cave in the country. Origen Alexandrisky, writing about 247, refers to a cave in Bethlehem in which, according to locals, Jesus was born. As one of the main centers of a Christian pilgrimage, Bethlehem drew to itself attention of all Christian churches. Except Orthodox Christians and Catholics, presence of Armenians, at least since the 5th century. and in descriptions of pilgrims since the 14th century, followers of the Ethiopian and Nestoriansky churches, Maronites, Jacobite, Orthodox Georgians and others is noted here. Christmas ceremonies are carried out in Bethlehem to 3 different dates. On December 25, traditional date in Roman Catholic and Protestant faiths, but Orthodox Christians and Syriac Orthodox Christians celebrate Christmas on December 25. On January Copts the 29th days of the month Hoik. On January 7 in a leap year. And Armenians -6 on January 19. The majority of Christmas religious processions pass through Yasli Square that opposite to Church of the Nativity. Roman Catholic Church services are held to churches of Street Catherine and Protestants often use for such purposes to Paula Pastuskov. Culture and art. The Bethlehem embroideresses were famous for the wedding clothes. The Bethlehem embroidery was known to for its strong cumulative effect of colors and metal gloss. Less formal dresses were sewed from fabric of indigo collar with capes. From wool of local production, put on a top. Festive dresses were sewed from striped silk with winged sleeves and the short jacket of a taxir known as the Bethlehem jacket. Texire was sewed from a velvet or cloth, usually with a dense embroidery. The Bethlehem embroidery is unique the fact that in it the gilded or silk thread on silk, wool, felt or a velvet used in clothes for creation of the stylized flower patterns with free or roundish lines is used. The similar equipment was used at a pashivka of imperial wedding dresses. Sub, and which were carried by married women. Some traced her to Byzantium, others to official suits of the Ottoman Empire. Being female residents of the Christian town, local women also decorated church vestments with a dense embroidery and silver brocade. The main attraction of the city is a cave of Christmas, the greatest Christian shrine where, according to the legend, Jesus Christ was born.
Over a cave Church of the Nativity which is at Yasli Square is constructed, and outside it is more similar to a small fortress than to the temple.
The basilica is constructed in 326 at Saint Helena. In 529 the church was destroyed during the revolt of Samaritans against Byzantium. Right after suppression of a revolt, the Emperor Justinian Veliki restored it and considerably expanded. In the city and vicinities there is a set of the holy and historical sites, the main of them. Tumrakili. Kabbatrakil. On entry into Bethlehem from Jerusalem, on the Old Hebron Road. It is esteemed by Jews, Christians and Muslims.
Directly under Church of the Nativity are located
Christmas Cave, St. Jerome's Cave. Here he lived decades and here was buried. Cave of the Bethlehem Babies. Church of the Nativity is surrounded. The Orthodox Greek monastery adjoins from the southeast. The Franciscan monastery with Church of Street Catherine, the main Catholic temple of the city, adjoins from the north. The Armenian monastery adjoins from the southwest. The Lactile Den, located near Christmas Basilica. Wells of the Tsar David, from which, according to the legend, 3 of its brought to the Tsar David water brave the soldier. Isbosef, Elazar, Shama. During fight with Philistines. Or in the territory of the Catholic Social Center. In 1895 near Wells the remains of the Byzantine Church were found. The holy sites near Bethlehem. The Greek Orthodox monastery of shepherds located in Beit Secure in 2 km to the east from Church of the Nativity. The monastery is a farmstead of Monastery of Saint Sabas the Sanctified. Here, according to the Orthodox legend, an angel announced to shepherds Christ's birth. A cave which served shepherds as a lodging for the night in Christmas night, and in which they, according to the legend, are buried, is a crypt of cave church of the monastery now. Near a crypt there is a modern Greek Orthodox church, Glory in Vishni to God. Ancient ruins in the churchyard, according to the legend, are considered as the tower remains Gader mentioned in the Old Testament. It is considered also that there was a field vuza on which Ruff collected ears. The Catholic temple, Glory in Vishnik Bog, constructed in honor of the phenomenon to shepherds of the angels who announced Christ Redeemer's Christmas. To the east from Bethlehem, near Paul Pastakov.
The Orthodox Greek monastery Eli Proroka located midway from Jerusalem to Bethlehem.
In the territory of Israel, but not Palestinian Authority.
The Orthodox Greek monastery of Saint Theodosius the Synobiarch is located in 11 kilometers to the east from Bethlehem.
In the territory of the monastery there is a cave in which, according to the legend, the magicians coming to bow to the bin-born Christ stopped. Saint Sabas the Sanctified's monastery is located approximately in 15 kilometers to the east from Bethlehem, in the Judaic desert. Historical places. Fortress Herodion, which was constructed by Herod Veliki, who was governing in Judea during Christ's birth and ordered to make, according to the Gospel, the massacre of the innocents. It is located in 5 kilometers to the southeast from Bethlehem. Solomon's Ponds, located near the road from Bethlehem to Hebron, 3 huge tanks for collecting water, a part of the ancient water supply system of Jerusalem. In Bethlehem there is Putin Street, which received such name at an official visit of the Russian President V. Putin to Palestine in June 2012, on which then the Russian Center of Science and Culture was open, and since 2013 the Cultural Business Center of Russia is also under construction. Also far. Write comments. Read comments. Interesting people will tell interesting stories. All of good mood and good luck.